Chevy Chase region of Montgomery County. Although all are welcome, the Bethesda Chevy Chase region includes Rockville, Potomac, Bethesda Chevy Chase, and North Bethesda Garrett Park. Please remember, if you're not presenting, please turn off your microphone and camera. Although we are using this virtual format to discuss the county's capital budget priorities, we want to acknowledge the elected officials from both the state and county level that may be participating in this discussion. If you are here representing a county council member or a state official, please raise your hand. We'll be happy to recognize you if you're in attendance. Okay. I'm going to ask that, I'm sorry, all these are always done on the fly. If you can, type in the meeting chat who you are and which elected official you're representing. I think that would be most helpful. While you do that, I want to just acknowledge that next on the agenda will be a brief presentation by our Regional Advisory Board Chair, Katia Marin. The county's Office of Management Budget will follow with a presentation on the fiscal climate. You will then hear some remarks from our county executive, Mark Elrich. The forum will conclude with your ability to participate and express your views on the budget in 5 breakout rooms. These breakout rooms will be smaller discussions on some general topic areas, including transportation, education, recreation parks and libraries, environment, and then health and human services and other CIP topics. These smaller discussions will help allow us to obtain a regional snapshot of important issues. We encourage you to visit, ask questions, participate in as many of the breakout sessions as possible. You can visit each session by returning to the main webpage at www.montgomerycountymd, all spelled out, .gov/OMB, and selecting the link for the breakout room of your preference. Again, that URL is www.montgomerycountymd.gov/OMB. If there is time before we move to the breakout rooms, we'll take some general questions. Otherwise, questions on the detailed topics in the breakout rooms are generally best addressed there, since we'll have the county department and agency representatives available in the rooms to help answer your questions. Questions will be handled by raising your hand in Teams. If you're not successful doing that, send an email to one of the regional, to me, Ken Hartman, ken.hartman@montgomerycountymd.gov, and again, listed in the chat, and we'll make sure we get your questions answered. Members of our Regional Advisory Board, the Montgomery Department representatives, and the agency representatives will be available to participate in each of the rooms with you. At a later date, this advisory board will provide the county executive with a summary of concerns that were raised and a list of priorities for the upcoming FY23 capital budget and the FY23 to 28 capital improvements program. Since this is a new approach to gathering public input, we would like your thoughts on how this meeting went from your perspective. What did you like? What did you wish we had done? And of course, to provide that feedback, please feel free to send me an email, ken.hartman, Hartman, @montgomerycountymd.gov. And I see in the chat that Isabel Stairs is here, and she is representing Delegate Mark Corman from State District 16. Welcome, Isabel. Now I'd like to turn the mic over to our Regional Advisory Board Chair, Katia Marin, for some remarks. Katia?
Thanks, Ken. Thanks to everyone who is joining us for the budget forum tonight. We're pleased to have the opportunity to hear from County Executive Elrich as the county faces unusual and unprecedented circumstances. The Western Montgomery County Community Advisory Board is one of 5 and is comprised of nonprofit, residential, and business representatives, and our role is to provide input to the county executive and county council. Our goal is not to find a single voice for the region, but to represent its various perspectives, strengths, and challenges. As with any other committee or board, our strength ideally comes from our diversity. And of course, in our case, it comes from Ken as well. We meet monthly, usually the 3rd Monday of the month, and meetings are open to the public. This coming Monday, we'll have presentations from Strathmore and the National Philharmonic, so please consider joining us. Knowing Mark and his team, I know that they are extremely interested in hearing what we have to say, so please stick around for the breakout sessions to share your questions and comments. Mark, I want to thank you for being here tonight, and I will now pass it over to Deborah Lambert from OMB for her presentation.
Thank you, Katya. Good evening. I'm Deborah Lambert, an analyst from the Office of Management and Budget for Montgomery County Government. This evening, we will review the purpose for the Citizen Advisory Board meetings, what the Capital Improvements Program is all about, the fiscal outlook for fiscal 22 through fiscal year 27, the timeline for the development of the Capital Improvements Program, and how you can access the county's budget online through Open Budget. The county executive will then review his priorities for the capital projects, followed by some time for questions and answers. Next slide. The purpose of these meetings about the county's capital improvements program are: 1, to provide residents information about the capital budget and capital improvements program, to give residents the opportunity to express their views about the capital improvements program, and finally, we will provide your feedback about capital improvement projects to departments and decision makers such as the county executive. In previous years, we waited until the spring to ask for resident feedback. By asking for your feedback now, we can address community needs earlier in the process. Next slide. There are 2 county budgets. First, the county operating budget provides services for teachers, librarians, and things like social workers. The county's capital budget provides for facilities like school buildings and fire stations. Next slide. So what is the Capital Improvements Program, or CIP? Capital improvements are useful for long periods of time. They require large expenditures and result in a durable capital asset, such as a fire station or a school building. Our capital improvements program is a 6-year plan that includes estimates for capital expenditures, funding requirements, and program data. While the plan is for 6 years, Council approves spending authority for the next year, and each project is described on a project description form, otherwise known as a PDF. Next slide. Our current fiscal year 21 to fiscal year 26 approved capital improvements program, CIP, has expenditures over the next 6 years that total $4.35 billion. This pie chart shows the distribution of capital improvement funds by agency. Montgomery County Public Schools and Transportation make up more than 63% of the capital improvements program, with a total of 37% going to all the other agencies like Montgomery College, Parks, Public Safety, Libraries, Recreation, and other county facilities. Next slide. Now let's talk about the fiscal picture over the next 6 fiscal years. Next slide. There are key concepts the county uses when preparing the budget. Overall, our focus is on financial sustainability. Montgomery County must submit a balanced budget where revenues cover expenditures in spite of revenue volatility. We are slowing down the growth of debt so that we can slow down the growth of debt service expenses. Debt service has become a large part of our operating budget. The county's fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21 budgets met the county's reserve contribution target of 10% of government revenues. These revenues are like a rainy day fund that provides a buffer to COVID-19 related revenue volatility and other unexpected events. The county is also responsible for pre-funding of its retiree health benefits and pensions. Next slide. Next slide. The impact of the COVID virus only began to be known very late in the county's fiscal year 21 budget process, and there continue to be many unknowns, including the duration and severity of the shutdown orders, as well as the complete extent of federal aid to assist residents, businesses, and the county. Next slide. The county was able to successfully renegotiate its labor agreements to minimize the financial impact of COVID-related differential pay. The result of this effort was the county's fiscal year 21 budget grew by only 0.8% over the approved fiscal 20 budget. Also, this past July, the county executive and county council implemented a fiscal year 21 savings plan that reduced operating budget expenditures by almost $44 million. In addition, $28 million was saved in cash related to the capital improvements program. Next slide. For fiscal year 20, revenues and expenditures were trending close to the budget through the end of the third quarter, but the COVID crisis led to increased expenditures and reduced revenues in the fourth quarter of fiscal 20. The county's year-end financials are not yet finalized, but information indicates federal stimulus support to individuals and businesses may have cushioned some of the COVID revenue impacts. Also, the county received almost $223 million in federal aid that can be used for COVID expenses. But even with all this aid, plus a continuity of services budget, our reserve fund balance may still need to be drawn down. Next slide. The county is also pursuing Fema reimbursements for COVID-related activities. With both the $223 million in federal aid plus Fema reimbursements, the county has been able to provide grant and assistance programs to the local community, such as COVID testing, direct financial assistance, rental assistance, food assistance, grants for small businesses, and personal protective equipment. Next slide. The county is also using federal funds to provide differential pay for county employees who work in direct response to the COVID emergency. Above all, there is great uncertainty as to when the crisis will end. Next slide. So, where does the money in the operating budget come from? Almost 60% of the operating budget revenues come from property taxes at almost 31% and income taxes at almost 29%. Next slide. There is a mixed revenue outlook with a lot of uncertainty in the county's revenues. The implementation of master plans will ultimately increase revenues. However, the Wynn case will continue to have a large impact on the county's income tax revenues. The Wynn case was decided by the United States Supreme Court and provided refunds to residents who had out-of-state earnings. The total impact of refunds from the Wynn case are estimated to total almost $146 million. Next slide. More mixed revenue signals result from property tax assessments that increased by 2.3%, home sales that decreased by 2.2%, and the county's unemployment rate was 7.4% in July 2020 compared to 3.2% in July 2019. Next slide. The county's July revenue update projected a $190 million reduction in revenues in fiscal 21 and a reduction of over $1 billion over the next 6 years. This will have long-term financial consequences due to the charter limit, which the county executive will discuss. Further, county revenues for fiscal 21 and fiscal 22 are estimated to be less than fiscal 20, and revenues are not expected to recover until fiscal year 23. On the positive side, the state of Maryland recently reported ending fiscal year 20 with a surplus. Next slide. Another positive in the county's August income tax distribution that was more than the county's estimates. However, additional federal COVID support for individuals, businesses, and local governments is uncertain. Critical information is being gathered to refine the county's revenue estimates. Next slide. Now let's take a look at the county's operating budget fiscal picture. Legal requirements like maintenance of effort, or MOE, for schools and Montgomery College take up a large portion of our operating budget. Maintenance of effort requires that the cost per student be maintained each year. So when the number of students increases, as it has with schools, the budget for schools also will increase. The fiscal year 21 operating budget was a continuity of services budget that assumed revenues estimated in March 2020. Next slide. However, we now know that fiscal year 21 fees, bus fares, licenses, permits, fines, and other revenues have seen a 25% decline, and that equates to almost $36 million in reduced revenue compared with the fiscal 21 approved budget. Next slide. When you consider schools and Montgomery College maintenance of effort requirements, that uses over 53% of the annual operating budget. Debt service is a growing requirement in our operating budget, currently comprising almost 12% of the operating budget. When you subtract maintenance of effort requirements for schools and the college, plus other requirements like insurance, utilities, pensions, and reserves, only around 28% remains in the budget that is discretionary. Next slide. We've already discussed the growing needs and expenditures the county has made related to the COVID crisis, and we discussed how maintenance of effort requirements increase the county's budget when student enrollment increases, as it has over the past several years. In addition, there are operating budget impacts from opening new facilities. Also, there have been spikes in weather and snow removal, increases in fuel, energy, and food prices. All of these have contributed to increased cost for important parts of the county's operating budget. And debt service has already become a large and growing part of our operating budget. Next slide. The county's capital budget also has a number of fiscal challenges. Specifically, Montgomery County Public School enrollment growth will place additional requirements on the county's capital budget for new schools and additions, so that the school system can avoid significant increases in the use of relocatable classrooms and putting areas of the county into moratorium. Also, capital construction costs have been increasing over time, and we need to maintain our current infrastructure, so more funding is needed for HVAC, roof replacement, and road resurfacing to protect our infrastructure. It is uncertain whether all of these capital demands will be affordable in the capital budget. Next slide. The Capital Improvements Program directly impacts the operating budget in the following ways. 10% of our Capital Improvements Program is assumed to be contributed by PAYGO, or cash that is allocated directly into the CIP. However, the fiscal year 21 savings plan reduced PAYGO by $23 million, so PAYGO is now only $8.6 million for fiscal year 21. $61 million in other cash is also required from the operating budget to support county capital projects. The cost to operate new or expanded facilities can also significantly increase our operating budget. And finally, debt service directly impacts our operating budget. For each $10 million in debt, debt service increases by $1 million, and these debt service payments are contributed for 20 years. Next slide. Even with our plan to reduce the amount of annual debt issued over the next few years, our debt service costs continue to grow, and is expected to reach almost $465 million for fiscal year 26. As you can see from this chart, the growth in debt service continues to crowd out other spending we would like to do in the operating budget. Next slide. For every $1 million used for debt service, we could provide 14 public school teachers, operate 1 library for a year, provide emergency shelter for 160 people. We could provide rental assistance for 416 families or purchase 2 new buses. Next slide. The growth in our debt service is occurring even as our general obligation bond borrowing is expected to decline over the next few years. Next slide. This is the timeline for the development of the Capital Improvements Program. Submissions by departments occur in September, followed by internal review and meetings from October through early January. The Capital Improvements Program is transmitted by the County Executive to the County Council on January 15th each year. Amendments occur in March and April. There are public hearings and council committee review sessions in the January through May timeframe. And Capital Improvements Program is approved by council in late May. Next slide. The Office of Management and Budget publishes both the capital and operating budgets online through its Open Budget application. In Open Budget for the capital budget, you can click on the map and see all the capital improvement projects in a particular area of the county. The online capital and operating budgets may be found at montgomerycountymd.gov/open-budget. Next slide. And now we will hear from Montgomery County Executive Mark Elrich.
Mr. Elrich, I think you're on mute.
County Executive is working on getting his mic to work. I just want to let folks know that the links to the breakout rooms are going to be posted onto the chat as well as on the website. Please check the chat for the links, and we'll be with the County Executive shortly.
Ken, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm speaking through my telephone and looking at you on video, so this will be interesting. Okay, so first of all, thank everybody for being here, and I really appreciate you joining us here tonight. Last year we changed our policies and started doing our budget briefings before we did the budget. Prior to that, they used to do the budget, and then they do the briefings after the budget was already done. And that didn't work out so well. So we decided we'd do our briefings first, get the community's input, and then go about working on the budget. So that's what you're getting tonight. We've done the operating budget forms. Now we're finishing up the CIP forms. We have 3 more to go. And then we'll start in earnest in putting the budget together. We have a couple more things we're looking at before we really, I'd say, double down on the budget. One is that we're going to evaluate our income tax revenues that come in November. And then after the income tax revenues arrive, our property tax revenues will arrive in December. And those 2 things will answer the questions that were previously laid out. What is the extent of damage that COVID has done to our revenues, and what are the implications for the budget going forward? So in the meantime, what you're looking at are the initiatives that we've tried to focus on, and we're continuing to focus on as we go through this experience with the COVID. We are working on expanding early child care and education, because we know that this is foundational to being able to get all students in our county on a level playing field. And so we're focusing on making sure we have the ability to expand facilities and do more. We're looking at what we can do to preserve and increase affordable housing. We lose housing faster than we're able to produce it, particularly affordable housing. And building market housing does not create affordable housing. The expensive housing that dots Bethesda, it does not get any cheaper, and certainly doesn't become affordable because somebody builds a new high-rise. So we have a problem that needs to be addressed by focusing on affordable housing. We're continuing our work fighting climate change, and so you're going to see some proposals coming over from us on the building code. It's the year that we do a revision of the building code. We're making strong recommendations on the green building code. We're looking for ways to increase the electrification of our bus fleet and our county vehicle fleet. And we're continuing to push on some other experiments. We are taking one of our buildings on Beers Mill Road, the senior center over there, and we're putting in solar windows, windows that are supposed to be able to generate electricity from the glass in the window itself. And we're going to see what promise that holds for the rest of the buildings in the county once we see how it works there. We're also working on the bus rapid transit network. So we've done a light version of BRT on Route 29. We're doing the study so we can provide the additional dedicated lane that we need to really speed up the service there. We've put out for bid for requests of expressions of interest, the bus rapid transit that would run from Bethesda to Clarksburg. We've taken those proposals and we're working them into a final plan, which will then go out to bid for actually doing the project. And we've made major revisions to the Corridor City's transitway so it addresses the needs of the life sciences area up there. It can be done more reasonably and more quickly, and it addresses some of the concerns that the state had when they told us they wouldn't fund it the way it was currently designed. We continue to work on improving economic and community development in the county. I'm happy to say that after about a year of negotiation, we signed an agreement with WMATA on the joint development of the White Flint Metro site, 15 acres there that WMATA controls. And our thinking is that we want to try to focus that site on being a hub for the biotech industry, as well as the computing, artificial intelligence, security, and the computer world. And those 2 things are coming together in biology now. You'll see an increasing wedding of science that's wet science and electronic science. And so we think that those efforts will be important. We've also revamped the workforce development organization to be more responsive to the needs of people in the county. We're reimagining public safety. I had money in the budget before George Floyd and everything else that happened that would enable us to hire a consultant to evaluate the police department. And I'm more committed than ever to evaluating not just discipline, but the things that go before discipline, the training of the officers, how we hire people, how people are promoted, what the expectations are, and really importantly, what guidance do we give officers in terms of how they carry out their job. We know we have a divided community. We've had incidents that have kind of exacerbated those tensions. And, you know, if George Floyd's death has done anything, it's certainly elevated the concerns about policing to a much higher level. We also continue to advance our work on racial equity and social justice as we begin to start looking at policies and evaluating them in terms of what is their impact on communities, particularly communities of color, making sure that we don't have disparate outcomes or that we don't ignore some communities and put our investments in one place and don't make sure our investments in the county are equitably distributed. Next slide. So the capital efforts that go along with this are we're supporting childcare renovations to make sure that there are facilities out there that child care providers can move into. If we want to expand childcare, we actually have to increase the number of providers and the places where they can provide these services. Our affordable housing initiatives look to leverage private sector funding to preserve and increase the stock of affordable housing. And one of the things we've done on projects that we're involved in is insisting on a higher level of affordability and a wider range of affordability than we've achieved in the past. As I said before, we're looking at increasing the efficiency of our buildings and electrifying more of the components that go into a building. We are about to introduce the Green Building Code, as I said, so we expect that our buildings will get greener and more efficient as time goes on, and we're going to set standards for existing buildings to start raising their level of efficiency over time. We're looking at the introduction of electric buses. We've started discussions with the school system about flipping their fleet over a period of time from diesel buses to electric buses. And our purchases for bus rapid transit and for buses in the county in general are going to be electric, and we're continuing to plug away at what we can do in terms of the rest of our fleet. But those are all doable and achievable. And we're looking at what do we do about resource recovery in our recycling facilities. Our existing recycling facility is at the end of its life cycle. It no longer functions efficiently. It's got problems and it's overwhelmed by the amount of trash that it processes today. So we're looking both at what we can do to improve that facility, but also look for opportunities to monetize the wastes in ways that we haven't monetized them in the past. And that includes looking for partnership with companies that might partner to take the plastic waste and turn it into product instead of the county simply selling bundled skids of recycled plastics. We think we can do better. There are some models of other organizations that are getting into a more complete use of waste, and we're looking to do the same. Next slide. It also supports our bus rapid transit efforts. Tomorrow I'll be doing an opening of the US 29 Flash, which is bus service that will run from Burtonsville to Silver Spring. We're looking to unload some of the massive congestion on the Route 29 corridor. Right now, we have decent running ways north of New Hampshire Avenue and south of New Hampshire Avenue. It's in mixed traffic. And we're looking at an additional improvement that'll get more of that out of mixed traffic and into a dedicated lane. As I said, work's progressing on 355, and we're also advancing the planning of Veers Mill Road, which will connect the upper end of the red line on one side of the county to the upper end of the red line on the other side of the county. So that'll help our residents get east and west in the county, something for which we do not have very many, either, frankly, transportation routes or even roads. There are very few roads that run east-west in the county. And we're beginning the planning for New Hampshire Avenue Bus Rapid Transit and for the North Bethesda Transitway, which will run from the mall with Westfield over to the Grosvenor Station, most likely. And the thought there is that there will be an opportunity for buses to slip onto the Beltway and 270 and make a journey over to Northern Virginia, which is one reason we're interested in what the state does with the with that side of the Beltway. And that study, of course, is going forward. Next slide. So the capital budget is supporting my initiatives. We've continued to put money into Wheaton, White Flint, and White Oak economic redevelopment. We're replacing a leased fire station and police station to better meet public safety needs and reduce the long-term costs. And we're continuing to look at collaboration facilities that provide mental health and substance abuse treatments to help people avoid incarceration. Two things that have kind of come out of COVID that impacts facilities and long-term costs for the county. One is that we set up hubs, 8 hubs in the county to provide services closer to neighborhoods where the services are needed. And that's something that in the past hadn't been deemed feasible. Well, we're doing it now, and it looks like it's a good model. And so it's quite possible that some of our services will get decentralized and brought closer to the communities that use the services. The other thing that's happened with teleworking is when I came in, the county had a very pro-teleworking policy in which virtually nobody ever got approved to telework, but the policy was great. And when COVID hit, we told our managers that we were going to have to move to more teleworking. The first go-round of proposals that came back to us were not very aggressive, and so we said, no, actually, we need a lot more people teleworking. But we got to the point where we had virtually 3/4 of our workforce that could telework, actually teleworking. And we survived, and people continue to do their jobs. And we're looking at this going forward as how we can further economize on the amount of space we have in order to use that space more efficiently and cut down some of our rental costs for lease space. Next slide. Racial equity means that we're working to close the gaps so that race doesn't predict one's success, nor does the zip code and the neighborhood you live in. And that is certainly true in Montgomery County today. You can see the differences in scores, you can see in performance in school. You can still look at the school to prison pipeline, which is unfortunately more alive and well in Montgomery County than we'd like to admit. We have very high rates of minority incarceration, and we have a lot of disconnected youth, again, many of them in the minority communities. We have to do better. We can't persist at being 2 different counties. And so we're going to continue to work and to find ways to make improvements in service delivery. I really believe in early childhood education. I was an elementary school teacher, and you could see it when I was teaching, that students who didn't have early support and came to school behind tended to stay behind. And that students who had supports when they were younger, had supports before kindergarten, they came to school more on a level playing field, and they were able to maintain themselves on a level playing field. So I'm a big believer in early childhood education, and we're going to continue to do everything I can to promote it. And also, trying to move beyond services to transform policies, institutes, in our institutions and structures. One thing that's always, concerned me is that normally if I were to ask somebody about a budget and I were to say, tell me how much you expect to spend on this service program in your department 10 years from now, the normal equation would be you'd increase that number by population growth and inflation. And that kind of says that whatever you're doing isn't really intended to solve the problem. And we really need to get focused on doing things that are transformative, doing things that change people's lives, doing things that offer people alternatives, and particularly with young children, give them a way to step up and move forward. So we're looking at our programs to make sure that we're looking at what we'd like the future to be like, and not simply focused on how do we treat the existing problem. Next. So, the charter limit. You have a really important vote to make in this election. We have the worst tax system in the Washington region, and probably in the state of Maryland. Our current law limits the amount of revenues we can collect. It doesn't limit your taxes. It limits your revenues. So what do I mean by that? So if you're one of the lucky people, the county invests and we make a neighborhood worth more than it was before, and you get a 30% tax in, 30% assessment increase, and that's phased in at 10% a year for 3 years, well, you will get a 10% tax increase, despite having this very draconian limit on taxes. And that's because the limit is not on the rate, the limit is on the amount of money we can collect. So if you pay more taxes because your assessment went up, then your bill will go up, but the money that you pay extra will actually go to reduce somebody else's bill. During the spring, when we were trying to figure out what was wrong with revenues in the county, and we had these high assessments, and residents were saying, you know, you're out of your mind. How can you say you don't have any money? My assessment went up 10%. We were figuring out how this actually played out. And so we pulled a bunch of addresses kind of randomly and went to the tax file to see what had happened. And so an example would be a neighborhood in Silver Spring that had seen an increase in value, not because of new construction and new building, but just because it had become more desirable. There were households there who saw their property value raised from $500,000 to $550,000, and sure enough, their tax bill went up 10%. We looked at other housing in other parts of the county. For example, we looked at some houses that it turned out that were assessed at $2 million, but they were assessed at $2 million for all 3 years of the cycle. There was no increase in their assessment over the previous assessment. And those people actually got a property tax cut. Money raised by the people who had the increase went to offset houses that were, you know, $1 million houses. And probably the most egregious thing was there is a very large commercial property. I won't say what it is, but it's very large, and it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and their taxes went down because everybody else's, because of the taxes that went up, their taxes went down because their assessment stayed flat. And so when the rate went down, the amount they paid went down. What this means is we're not able to grow our tax base. As Jacob Sesker, a former county employee, said to me, and actually said to the council some years ago, when Marriott fully comes online, on the one hand, Marriott will pay the taxes that their property's worth. On the other hand, that will not increase the taxable base in Montgomery County, nor will it yield additional revenues to Montgomery County. And last year, that was one of the other things that Rich and I were puzzling over. And then we realized that in 1990, the county council, trying to avert a Ficker amendment, put in a tax law that created this limitation on taxes, not the tax rate, but limiting the amount the taxes could grow to last year's taxes plus inflation. And there was a second sentence that said exempt from this limitation was new construction and rezonings. Over 30 years, the county never captured any of the rezonings in Bethesda, any of the things that increased the value of property because we rezoned it. They were supposed, the difference between the old assessment and the new assessment was supposed to come in as additional revenue, not count against the ceiling of revenues. It didn't happen. And because we have a 3-year phase-in or a 3-year cycle of property taxes, and you have a 3-year phase-in of increases, and because we didn't have a system that captured construction, new construction over multiple years, we essentially captured a fraction of the new construction in the county, a fraction of the new construction in the county. And so we lost out on tens of millions of dollars in revenues that would have come in from new construction that didn't come in because we were limited in the amount of revenue we could raise. So I'm glad we're making this change, but it's absolutely critical to vote for question A and kill question B. Question B leaves the current system in place and makes one major change. Right now, it takes 9 council members to increase the taxes. With question B, no number of council members can increase the taxes. So we'll be forever limited to last year's taxes times the inflation rate. So this year is going to be a perfect example of a possible horrible storm. And the inflation rate is going to be close to 0. it is quite possible that because of reassessments of commercial property because of high vacancy rates, that we would actually collect less tax revenue, which would mean we'd have less tax revenue to form the base. That tax would then be multiplied by zero inflation. And because we don't count new construction, we haven't been capturing all of new construction, we haven't been capturing reassessments, the county would severely be limited in its revenue. And the impact on this year's budget will flat out be a disaster because we're at the top of our income tax rates. We can't raise them. And if we're in a situation where we can't raise property taxes or do anything with property taxes or realize the increases in value from property, then we are just seriously in trouble. Question A gets rid of the focus on the amount of tax you can raise and focuses on the tax rate, but it leaves in place the requirement for 9 votes to change the tax rate. And that would mean that if the council wanted to change the tax rate, they'd have to have a unanimous vote of the council to change the rate. This still leaves, it's still, some of us think, not the most democratic thing in the world to let one person do this, but it is the agreement that we all reached. This is supported unanimously by the council, and it's supported by me, and I think it's just really important for the future of the county. Our problem is we have to win on question A, and we have to defeat question B. So if you're going to vote, it's not enough to vote for question A. You have to vote against question B, because it is possible for question A to pass and question B to pass. If both of them pass, neither of them goes into effect, and we're left with the current system, which is completely broken anyway. So I want to show you some charts to kind of compare Montgomery County to the surrounding world that we live in. Got the next one there? Do we have the charts here tonight, guys?
Mark,
No, we don't. Yeah.
Mark, the charts I think were in the operating budget forums. I don't think they were in this version.
We used them for this version, I believe, one time. Okay, I'll just give you the gist of it. When you look at commercial property taxes around the region, Montgomery County is the cheapest state in the entire region. Our property taxes without the state tax are about 99 cents. The District of Columbia on commercial property is $1.85. In Fairfax, Virginia, it's $1.65 in Tyson's Corner. In I think it's Prince George's County is around $1.35. We have the lowest rate on commercial property in the region because our two rates are tied together. On residential property taxes, our rates are among the lowest in the region. I think there was, District of Columbia has an 85-cent residential property tax rate, but you can see if you've got a $1.85 commercial property tax rate that you're raising a lot of money. It makes it possible to lower the residential rates. The other rates, I know the numbers in Fairfax, their base tax rate's $1.15. If you're commercial property, you've got an additional 12.5 cents for all commercial property in Fairfax County that pays for transportation. And then if you're in special taxing districts like Tyson's Corner, you get another 40 cents added on top of that. But the 40 cents is mostly on commercial, not on residential. So without the charts, I can't show you them, but you get the idea. And if you're interested, we can get the charts out to you. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, County Executive. We are going to move to the breakout rooms. If you check your chat on Teams and on Facebook in the chat, there is a link in the chat to each of the breakout rooms. On Facebook, there is a link to www.montgomerycountymd.gov/OMB, where you can find the links. So please, you can join as many of the breakout rooms as you'd like, in whatever order you'd like. So let's thank you for this part. We're going to close from the breakout rooms and close from here at 8:30. So let's move on to the breakout rooms. Thank you again.